Welcome back, everybody. I'm Giles, and today we're going to talk about surgery on this Storm Audio ISP Elite Mark I. That's right. So this is the old one from way back in 2016. So what's that, 8 years old, almost 9 years old? Well, the point I want to make is that if you have a upgradable processor, you can upgrade it, right? So as things change, new versions of HDMI or whatnot, these units can have parts come out and new parts go in, as well as firmware updates. Now, if you're looking at AVRs, those aren't really as upgradable, or sometimes not upgradable at all. So if you want new features, particularly hardware features, that means you're buying something all over again. I like these units that you can upgrade over time so that they can grow with you and change as your needs change. And this one, man, it's got ports on the back so that you can add in additional channels. It's really, really cool. And today we're going to take and replace the HDMI board with this new 2.1 version. Now, you can actually upgrade the decoder board in this unit as well, which I will likely do at some point. However, that is a send it back to the factory upgrade. For this one though, I can do that myself, and I've got the part and we're gonna do that. However, the first thing you have to do is upgrade the firmware to the newest version. And the firmware on this thing is super old. So stick around with me as we take this unit, upgrade to HDMI 2.1, go through all the firmware updates, and show you exactly how, if you have a unit like this, you might be able to stay current and up to date and not have to chunk out your hardware and buy new stuff. All right, let's get started.
Before we get started, if you're into tech, hi-fi, or movies, be sure to push the subscribe button for new weekly videos. All right, it's time to break a few eggs and upgrade this Storm Audio. Well, hopefully I don't break any eggs. So I'm gonna log in to the expert setup, and I'm gonna connect, and we find ourselves in the UI. Here there is a section called Remote Upgrade, and this is where we're going to actually update this firmware. I've got this the file downloaded to my PC. I'm on my PC now, and I'm connected over my local area network IP address to the UI, the web UI in the ISP. So this is pretty cool. Now, just a quick note, this is on a super old firmware, so you get to see the whole deal. So we're on 3.4 R2 now, and I'm going to update to 3.5 R7. From there, we have to update to 4.1, and then we have to update to what's called Trans 4.2, and then we have to update to the new version, 4.6, whatever it is, 2 times. So this might take a little while, so I'll go as fast as I can through this section. But it's very important when you're going to update this board to get this updated to the newest firmware available, because my understanding is that if you install this board while you're still on older firmware, it'll cause some problems. So don't do that. All right, so we're at the section where we get to choose our file, and I've got that right here on my desktop. And so that's the ISP 3.57 2019. So yeah, I am, what is that, 4-5 years behind the times. SSP, and it says not to check these boxes, so I'm not gonna check those boxes, but I am gonna hit upload now. Are you sure you want to upgrade the processor firmware? I am sure. Well, fingers crossed. Let's go. All right, and we'll let this thing churn away. All right, looks like we're done with that firmware update. Now we've got to move on up to the 4.1 R2. So we're going to go ahead and connect again, password, and now we'll see that we're at the 3.5 R7 version. And from there, we're going to move to the 4.1 R2 version. So we're going to remote upgrade, choose a file. We'll then click upload, and it should do its thing magically. It took about 20 minutes for the last update, so I assume it'll be about the same for this. So here we go. All right, firmware looks like it is done and reset. So let's log into Expert Setup, and let's see what we've got here. So we are now at 4.1 R2, and this went much faster than before, super duper much faster than before. So now after this one, we need to move on up to the next, the 4.2 firmware. Now we're going to take the last step here, and we're going to update to the final firmware, which is 4.6 R1P2. And for whatever reason, it says that we have to do that twice. So I'm going to do that twice. So now we have even maybe this the load license new. It looks like this is changing quite a bit, but we'll firmware update here, and we're going to choose the file 4.6 R1P2. You can see the file populated there, and we will upload and move forward with this one. All right, now this is absolutely new after this firmware update. So we've now got a menu. Instead of just logging in, it gives us Storm Easy, Expert Setup, and Remote Control. So let's go with Expert Setup. Ah, that looks familiar. Log in. And now we're at 46R12P2, and that gets us up to current, right? So one thing they did say to do is to run this firmware twice, and then I will need to run the firmware again once I replace the HDMI board as well. So I'm going to go ahead and run that firmware now, and then we're going to go upstairs and do a little surgery and install this new board. So stick around with me, and we'll see what it looks like to really get in there and pull stuff out. The first step of the physical install is to get the case top off. So you're going to have screws on the sides and then across the top. They're two different size screws, so you'll find the right bits for that. And those details are actually included in the instructions that come with the HDMI board. And you can see that I have those spread out across the table. But it'll tell you what you need exactly to get this thing open. These screws were in there tight, really tight, but I was able to get them out with just a normal screwdriver without too much pain. One thing to be careful about as you take this lid off is from the rear on the left side, there's actually a ground connection there. So you'll want to make sure that you don't just pull that lid off super fast. You'll want to take some care so that you can remove that ground connection to the top. Now that you've got the lid off, we're down to the main event. And there are a few things that you need to be aware of and a few things to do as we get started. So one, the new HDMI card is not going to be the same shape as the old HDMI card. And that's okay, right? So that's fine. Now, as long as this isn't a Mark III that you're messing with, if you're in Mark I, the old HDMI card is going to have two cables. It's going to have a small 4-pin connector with white ends and then a much wider black cable that has red ends. And those are the two that you need to swap out, or at least to remove the card, you unplug them. And then that wide cable, when you replace the card with the new card, it will have a new cable that's longer. So you will use the new cable and not the old wide red cable. The old white cable will plug in, and you can see where these plug in the video. It's no challenge there. If you follow the instructions, you'll see the polarity though, so you can make sure you get that right every time. Now, another thing that you're going to want to do is attach the anti-static wristband. So that will attach to your wrist, and then it will stick on to the shroud around, I guess, what is the power supply inside of the unit, and that will help you keep from killing things inadvertently with static electricity, which you don't want to do. Now, the actual replacement of the card is straightforward. You're going to have a number of screws on the outside rear of the case. I think there are like 4 black structural kind of screws, and then 9, I think, silver smaller screws that actually plug into the HDMI. You'll take all of those out, and when you do that, the card will be loose. Then you can simply unplug the 4-pin connector and the larger ribbon cable. Then the install is just doing everything in reverse order. So for me, I found it easiest to put the card in, put in the screws, tighten it down. Then I connected both the cables, and then I removed the anti-static wrist strap, and good to go. With the card in, there are just a few steps left before we test. Now, you definitely need to get the case back on. You can just put that on the way you took it off. No big deal there. You do need to reapply the most current firmware one more time, because it's going to then update the firmware in the card itself. So you'll go back to the app, update the firmware just as I showed you before, and when that completes, it should show in the UI that you have the HDMI 2.1 version. It'll be very obvious there. Then it's just time to test stuff out. And so I set this up in my living room using a 2.1 setup, which is really easy for me to get plugged in and going pretty quickly. And lo and behold, magic happened and everything worked. I was super duper happy. The process works. Follow the instructions, follow the video, and it'll absolutely work out for you.
So that brings us to the end of the HDMI 2.1 upgrade for the Storm Audio ISP Elite Mark I. That's right, the old one. Now we can enjoy all of our 2.1 goodness in our home with this unit that is 8 years old for a price. That's right. I think this was pretty good. Now, all in all, this was a super easy upgrade. No problems at all. Firmware super easy to deal with, and then the actual unit itself, the HDMI board, it was just 2 cables and a bunch of screws. No problems. If I can do it, you can do it. Now, if you enjoyed this video, there'll be another one down in the corner. Go ahead and give that a click and watch it for at least 30 seconds because that's how long it takes for me to get a view. Also, remember to like, subscribe, ring the bell, do all those things so you'll be notified when more great content like this drop. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.